The original trunk floor was obviously rusted and had to be replaced. In doing so, we wanted the outcome to look like the original. In this video, we review the complete process of replacing the trunk floor. A donor floor out of a 1969 two-door Catalina hardtop was found on eBay outside of Toledo, Ohio for $200. The donor car had spent its life in Cincinnati. At first glance, the floor looked identical. The only difference was where the spare tire hold down and jack brackets were located. We started cleaning up the floor in week 10, June 23rd. There was far more metal than we needed, so we trimmed it down to a better starting place. The plan was to lay the donor floor in the trunk and trace around the edges so we could remove the right amount of the old floor. Looking at the existing floor, the second layer of metal seen through the rust hole was actually the top of the gas tank. Prior to removing the existing floor, we removed the tank. This photo is of the rust damage looking up from underneath. The first step in removing the trunk floor was to cut out the center area so we could stand on the garage floor. We were concerned with cutting more of the old floor out than the donor floor would cover. We quickly found that the donor floor would not go through the trunk opening, even when folding the sides in slightly. We briefly thought about raising the body off the frame, but decided that would not work either. The donor floor was not an exact match. It was actually about 4 inches deeper than the original, and the mounting supports were not in the same place. From looking to purchase sheet metal, we knew that one strategy would be to install the donor floor in thirds. Removing the left side of the floor allowed it to slip through the trunk hole. From there, we proceeded with marking and cutting. It was an iterative process where we checked with the floor and cut, and then checked again and cut some more until we had the proper amount of material removed. The last pieces removed were the old floor that were tack welded to the tail assembly. Final cuts were made on the donor trunk. It took a while, but we finally had all the trimming done. The final steps were to clean up the edges around the original floor for welding and spray some etching primer where needed. Once we had the opening ready, we painted the bottom of the donor floor. As you can see, we ended up with 3 primary pieces. By the end of week 15, Gary was welding the donor floor in place. At first glance, the donor floor looks original. Due to the size difference between the original and donor floors, we need to fill some gaps on the forward side. All welding on the new floor was completed. It looks pretty good. It was several weeks later before we returned to the trunk to grind down the welds and prepare the floor for paint. The welds on the bottom of the trunk were also ground down. Gary taped off the weld seams so that seam sealer could be applied. The sealer fills in the seams where the welds did not cover 100%. It was applied both inside and underneath the trunk. We purchased GM Spatter Paint from Ames Performance Engineering. Instructions said to lay down a coat of black paint first, so we did. We had discussed painting the new floor black before we found the spatter paint. Getting the floor all one color made it look a lot better. We would have left it black if we could not find spatter paint. Once dry, we immediately sprayed on the spatter paint. It took a few coats to cover. It may appear that we sprayed a lot of paint, but we only used 1 quart. The paint was fairly close to the original, with white and teal specks on a bluish-gray base. We were thrilled with the outcome. In spite of the small differences, the trunk floor looks original. If you want to see the painstaking aspect of this classic restoration, please watch our 6-part detailed series.